How y'all doing? For this book review, I'm going to review a book by C.J. Cherryh. Whose only works I've read up, before this was the Fated Sons trilogy, and she's been a famous writer since the 1970s. She's written plenty of novels, till then, still writing today. Well, in her 70s. You can still find her stuff in every new and used bookstores, what have you. But the one I'm going to review today is one I found half-price book, Sunfall in the Cities of Time to Come, written around the early 80s. Now, I picked this up at half-price books, let's see, and let me read you back at this and show you why I did this. Men had gone to the stars. They had trod the soils of distant planets and settled their colonies, yet the homeworld of Earth remained. It was legend. It was a place of nostalgia for mankind's lost youth. It was always there. For every son or daughter who had departed for the stars, there were those who preferred the original skies and winds of the worlds which had first endured humanity's trials and triumphs. The cities remained, over the eons, changing the sunset of Cherryh. They still stood, changed yet retaining their individuality, their unique characteristic, their ancient prides. That was okay, and so I, recognized the author. I saw the front there by, the great Michael Whelan. Read the back in there and just read like one of those distant future stories where, it takes place on Earth so far in the future, or if there's any remnants of our past, it's, considered legend, mystical, or no one understands the context, or probably doesn't exist. Things like Jack Vance's The Dying Earth series, or M. John Harris's Vericonian series, which I've only read the first 2 books, or of course, for those of you who know, Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, and also to my read list, William Hodgson's The Nightland. So, saw this at the bookstore, and I thought, okay, I had to pick this up and see. What this is anthology, each story taking place in a big city that we know today. London, New York, Paris, Peking, what have you. There's only 6 of them in this one. And I say that because in a further edition of this one, they added one takes place in Venice. So as I said, reading the back of it, each story is individual, they stand alone, but the only thing in common is that they are, character-driven stories that takes place, in the distant future. So, like the first one, first story takes place in Paris. The only death in the city. The setting was, Paris is now an area where there is no real death in most cases. Almost everyone is reincarnated when they die, but when the person is reborn, they can retain their past memories. There's 2 guys in the story that have been fighting for centuries, what have you. So, and the story involves a rare individual who's a newborn in a sense. That hasn't had centuries of life. He's newborn, and as a young man, he falls in love with this young girl. But she's a woman of the high-end nobles, per se, who has been reincarnated hundreds of times. He tries to confess his love to her, but she kind of laughs at him and everything. So he confesses. Not only confesses to her, but she didn't find him much of a novelty. So he does. He makes a offer to her to marry her for 4 years until her death. And she goes with it at first, only to find that there's a tragedy in the end of this. I don't want to give too much away of what I can here. Another one, the story takes place in London, the Haunted Tower. A beautiful woman who is the mistress of the Lord Mayor of the City of London, she gets arrested and put into the tower, the Tower of London, of course, and because she's connected to this form of espionage that happened, where she's mostly unaware of. But while she's there, hoping to try and, to charm her way out of it, she gets confronted by these ghosts, 2 young princes that were killed at the tower, Anne Boleyn and so forth, and she might be going insane, but they try to talk to her as like, things aren't going as you planned, and there may be something much more important for you to be a part of. Another story takes place in Moscow, called Ice, a hunter who goes out of the city walls, and he gets confronted by a wolf who, upon his confrontation with wolf, is now haunting his dreams and is affecting his sanity and everything. Rome, story takes place in Rome called Night Game, where higher end people are just to spend their time away by absorbing the dreams of lesser people, so to speak. Highliner in New York, which takes place in New York. A group of people who, don't understand this one. New York is now one huge superstructure containing everybody, not just a series of buildings, but it's now one huge building containing everything. And the main character is a man, and his crew work on building extra outside the city as they expand. Well, they get into a shady deal that ends up causing almost all of his crew, except for himself, to be killed. So a bit of a crime story about that. And the last one, The General, which takes place in Peking, China. The Forbidden City, is being under attack by these raging hordes of, who conquered everything around them, and Peking is the last area. It reads like Genghis Khan going against China, but it's actually a different barbarians, and that's kind of the point, because the general, an old man who gathered all the tribes together, he reaches, to the final city, but he is old and can't keep the tribes together. There's some guy that's probably one of his other soldiers is trying to backstab him, but his right hand man who and his wife. Let me go back again. The general, his wife, and his right hand man, the general saying that, we've been through this before, through several lives of the centuries. I am Caesar, you're Mark Antony, and this is Cleopatra. I'm King Arthur, you're Lancelot, and this is Guinevere. We've done this over and over again through our past lives. It's just a current incarnation. It's a very fascinating event. These are character-driven stories, under this theme, and when I first finished reading this, I felt like some of these stories didn't feel like they take place in a very distant future, as I expected some of these to be. Some of these could have been done maybe in a few centuries or even a millennia or so. The one in New York just felt like like a near future as opposed to a distant one. But but as I thought about it, it really didn't matter for the most part, and it's kind of the point. Not everything's going to be technologically the same, and even this is true in our world today. I mean, we can be in developed nations like ourselves, but there are places in the world that are still living as they were for centuries under low technologies and everything. So it doesn't deter from anything, and it's not a game changer for anything, but these are just wonderful stories to read under this theme. If you like character-driven stories and you like C.J. Cherryh, pick this up for your collection. Or if you haven't read C.J. Cherryh, give it a go. There's a reason she's a famous author and everything. And what else can I say? Well, I can't really say overly too much, but if you're like me, that like some of those distant future stories like this, you can't go wrong with just adding your collection here. As I say, if it's not like the greatest epics, like Frank Herbert's Dune and all that. These are just nicely each one-off stories that are not connected to each other. They just take place in different cities in the distant future. That's about it. Like them or hate them, but check it out. C.J. Cherryh's Sunfall and the Cities of Time to Come. Thank you all for watching, and have a nice day.